Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, December 20th, 2024. 2025, the year the income tax and the IRS are abolished. By his appointments to all the various positions in his incoming administration, President Trump has made it clear that things are going to be different this time around. The elite D.C. establishment and their minions, the D.C. group, are going to find themselves on the outside looking in. The incoming president doesn't want them anywhere around. And as you might imagine, this is creating a virulent reaction from the D.C. group. The best evidence of this are the attacks by the mainstream media, the talking heads on various television shows, and even articles in the Wall Street Journal questioning the qualifications of these Trump appointees. Now, most of us applaud President Trump's approach. Ordinary Americans who voted for Trump look at what the members of the D.C. group have created: a national debt of $36.1 trillion, an annual budget deficit of between $1 and $2 trillion, a bloated federal bureaucracy where government bureaucrats are receiving pay and benefits at an estimated 40% more than the same job pays in the private sector, Social Security being bankrupt in 10 years, Medicare being bankrupt in 10 years, runaway inflation that's eating away American savings and making it difficult for people to meet their families' most basic needs, an incomprehensible income tax code riddled with bought and paid for benefits by special interests, and the IRS to terrorize people with whom they disagree. Now, it's interesting that when members of the D.C. group are questioned about the above points, their first reaction is disdain. They believe no one has the right to question them about anything. They are the only people who have the intelligence and ability required to make decisions for the rest of us. When we push back and point out their failures, they're genuinely bewildered. Now, they've lived their entire lives in a completely different world than the one most of us live in. Since they were in high school, almost none of them have ever worked for a company that either makes a profit or goes out of business, that judges people on their ability to add to the profitability of the business, where people were fired if they were not productive, where vacations started at 1 week and only increased if you stayed with the company, where the only paid holidays were Christmas, Thanksgiving, July 4th, and New Year's Day, where employees either didn't get health insurance at all or had to pay for a portion of it, where raises were not guaranteed, and where employees had to contribute to their own retirement. Now, the D.C. group constantly reminds itself and us that they are the most valuable members of society. Now, in spite of having never worked in the private sector and not really understanding how the private sector works, they sincerely believe that they are responsible for and should be credited with any success that occurs in the private sector. This partially explains why many in this D.C. group are so dismayed and alarmed by President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency. The idea that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to tear down the massive bureaucracy they built is truly terrifying to the D.C. group. Of course, many of these elites know they've been running a massive scam for decades. They know they've designed and built the system to benefit themselves, not the American people. And they also know that if Musk and Ramaswamy start getting a really good look at things, their racket will be exposed and they'll be fortunate to stay out of jail. In conclusion, President Trump and his team are supported by a broad base of ordinary Americans who must confront reality every day and who believe that everyone should operate under the same rules that they do. Eliminating many of the useless and costly regulations will help all Americans, no question about that. However, nothing will directly affect ordinary Americans in as profound a way as repealing the income tax, eliminating the IRS, and enacting the FAIRtax. This is our opportunity to make a real change that will lead to greater prosperity for our children and the nation. And it's an opportunity that may not come again in our lifetime. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the FAIRtax, is not subverted by the D.C. elites. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance and we need your grassroots assistance. please email us at info@fairtax.org and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. If your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.